Morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Real Estate Appraiser Secrets. I'm Clint Walker. It is a kind of overcast day. That's why you get me without my cool sunglasses on today. And what I want to talk to you about in this episode is not really an agent question, but it was an agent interaction that I had recently. And this is going to touch on some contract stuff in our real estate sales contract. I am not a lawyer. In a previous life, I was a law student, but unfortunately I'm a dropout, but that did point me towards real estate because one of my favorite classes in law school was real estate law. And so anyway, I'm not a lawyer. This is going to touch on on the interpretation of some of the contract language in our purchase and sale agreement. So ultimately, you will need to seek legal advice if you find yourself in a conflict in this regard. But in this interaction, one of the things that was going on was the agent involved was misunderstanding the appraisal process, which led to a contract dispute over the earnest money. So what that was apparently in this person's deal, the buyer's lender ordered the appraisal. The appraiser goes out to the property and sees that the property is at a level of condition in which that lender specifically could not make the loan. This is not uncommon. Almost anytime your appraiser gets an order from a lender, our engagement letter says if the property is in C5 or C6 condition, which is the C5 would be bad condition and C6 is the worst condition out of a 6-star scale. If the property is in C5 or C6 condition, take photos and immediately report to the lender and do not proceed with the report. The reason for that is most of your conventional lenders can't lend on properties that are in C5 or C6 condition. I think in my experience, your best case scenario there is if I go to a property and it's in C5 condition, some lenders will instruct me then to make a list of all the repairs that are necessary to get the property to C4 condition and then appraise the property as if it were in C4 condition. So basically I got to use my imagination and appraise the property as if everything that I'm calling for was already complete. And then they will instruct the parties involved to make those repairs, bring the property up to what I've said is C4 condition, and then they'll make the loan once that stuff is done. Okay, so that's a complicated process, and that's a hard appraisal to do because it's really difficult to look past the reality of the property and come to an opinion of value, based on this imaginary condition imaginary condition of what you've seen. So you've got the appraiser has the instructions from the lender, who is their client, and that's important because the buyer is not the client, the buyer's agent is not the client, the lender is the appraiser's client, and they're the only ones who get to who get to give the appraiser instructions, and they control ultimately this appraisal process. And so if the appraiser sees that the property is in such poor condition that they would rate it C5 or C6, they immediately inform the lender, and the lender is going to say, do not proceed with the rest of the report unless we instruct you otherwise. If you're the buyer in this situation, you are probably going to receive a trip fee because the appraiser has gone out and they've done, if it's me, I almost always spend an hour driving anywhere. And then that site visit, when a house is in really poor condition, even a small house can take a considerable amount of time, because you got to take a lot of photos and you got to make a lot of notes. Because if the lender wants you to do the imaginary appraisal where it's in C4, you need to, have all your notes based on that trip, so you can do that. So you don't have to go back out to the property. The appraiser got some time in it. There's going to be a fee probably charged to the buyer for the appraiser having gone out, and the report and the appraisal at that point might get canceled because the lender's underwriting requirements might be such that they simply can't lend on C5 and C6. And so the misunderstanding that got all this started was that this agent was under the impression that when the appraiser went to the property, that they had done the appraisal. And so because they thought that the appraiser going to the property was them doing the appraisal, their interpretation of that was when the buyer informed them that the lender can't make the loan, that somehow triggered the appraisal clause in the contract, which so this is where it goes back to my caveat at the beginning of this, that I'm going to get into some of the contract language, and that this ultimately needs to be interpreted through a lawyer. But the appraisal contract language is, at least the part that this person was talking about, is about the appraised value. And my contention and what I believe is accurate in this is that part is about the appraised value. So if the appraised value comes in below the contract price, it tells you what has to happen. In this instance, in any instance like this, there will be no appraised value because the appraiser has been ordered by the lender to stop work, okay? Because they don't want to pay for the whole report if they can't make the loan. I mean, it makes perfect sense. They would much rather pay just the much smaller trip fee, which is going to be between $150 and $200, or the buyer pay that and cancel the loan and let the buyer go find a new lender, than to let the appraiser proceed and ultimately owe, whatever the full appraisal fee was, $600, $700. So the report gets canceled. There is no appraised value, and in my opinion, that means the appraisal value paragraph in the contract cannot be triggered, which means none of those deadlines, none of those procedures for the two parties involved get triggered. Again, a lawyer has to give the final answer on that. But what I want you to know is, at the time that the appraiser goes to do the site visit, the appraisal is not done. In a lot of situations, and I made another video about this already, that's the appraiser's first or second or third step in a long list of steps for gathering information on the property. They don't know the value of the property when they go out there. Excuse me. They might have picked some comps, but whatever they've done, whatever work they've done before they get to the property is completely subject to what they find when they get there. They may have to throw every comp, every preconceived notion of what they've done on, looking on the internet. They may have to throw it all away and start completely over after that site visit. Consequently, if the house is in a C5 condition, they might not be doing a report at all because the lender that hired them can't lend on it. So that is my secret for today. It's only a secret because nobody's taught you this before, and I'm sorry for that, but that's sort of my whole mission, and that's why I do these videos and do these classes, because I want you to know these little details and not get, your client's been out of shape and you've been out of shape on something that I think that every agent ought to be being taught. So I hope that was helpful. If I can be of service to you, please go to appraiserpool.com. You can quote your appraisal, you can look on there and go through the steps and figure out exactly what your appraisal is going to cost, or your professional measurement will cost, without ever having to talk to me. And you can do that any time of day. You can see my schedule and book me on there if you need me. If you have a service that I can't do myself, I can help you find somebody. It won't cost you anything. Anyway, I really appreciate you watching. If you come up with any questions from this or other questions in general, please leave a comment and I'll make a video about it. Hope you have a great rest of your week.